So first presentation, the first paper is written by Denise, Wilkins, Ruzanna, Chitchyan, and Mark Levine. The paper is on the peer-to-peer energy market, and our speaker is Denise Wilkins.
Hi everyone, great to be here. I'm going to share my screen with you, so hopefully you're able to follow along. Okay, I'm not a big Zoom user, so are you able to see my presentation?
We can indeed, and I also want to interject that this is a CHI Best Paper Honorable Mention.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so
congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. So this is some work that I did while I was at the University of Exeter, and I did it with my collaborators Ruzanna, Chitchyan and Mark Levine, who are at Bristol and Lancaster. And here we were really interested in exploring peer-to-peer energy markets and trying to understand how prospective users think about these markets, would like to use these markets, and some of the design implications that we can draw out from that work. So if you're not sure what peer-to-peer energy markets are, you can perhaps think of them a little bit like Airbnb for people who have solar panels on their houses, and they'll be producing electricity for themselves to use during the day. But there's normally an amount of excess energy that they're not able to use. And at the moment, that in the UK in particular, that energy is kind of sold effectively to the government, so they pay a small subsidy. But people are increasingly interested in creating new opportunities and by enabling houses to trade electricity with each other. So really think of it something like Airbnb, where you can kind of sell your excess generation to one of your neighbours. Now, there's been a lot of interest in peer-to-peer energy markets from policy, from human geography. People are very interested in the technology that underlies the system. So blockchain is seen as an ideal technology. And people are also interested in kind of business models as well. There hasn't been that much interest in CHI exploring this area yet. There have been a couple of papers, but there is research in CHI that we can draw on. So we can think about HCI for sustainability. There is research there looking at how people can use energy sustainably, but it has mostly focused on consumption, where one of the really interesting things about peer-to-peer energy trading is that people will be generating energy as well, so that's quite novel. We can also draw on research around the sharing economy. So these are platforms like Uber and Airbnb. And I was particularly interested in this body of work because it really highlighted some of the kind of ethical and sustainability dilemmas that people have when they want to create these new peer-to-peer systems. But we wanted to go back and really understand how members of the public think about and talk about peer-to-peer energy trading systems. How can they support public's participation in sustainable behaviour, in particular in the decarbonisation of the UK's energy market, and how do people want to participate in these? So we did 40 semi-structured interviews, and these were all with people in the UK who had a self-defined interest in renewable energy. We asked a variety of questions, and what I'd love to do is kind of jump into the analysis and some of the findings. So we analysed this data qualitatively using thematic analysis. So to begin with, we wanted to talk about, well, how do participants understand the decarbonisation process of the UK's energy market in general? So to begin with, the first way that people were interested in this was in terms of renewable energy and engagement with renewable energy as a component of a sustainable lifestyle. So this really meant that they understood engagement with renewable energy as part of other activities that they engage in to live sustainably. So for example, growing their own food or shopping locally. So although living sustainably is often thought of as supporting global resources, so things like the climate, which is something that belongs to everybody, what was interesting in our participants is that they also talked about it benefiting more personal and national interests. So I'll outline those in a bit more detail going forward. And in particular, people draw on discourses of being green, efficient, and also secure to argue for different types of benefit. Okay, so in terms of the kind of first sub-theme that we generated, people talked about engagement with renewables as doing something good for the planet. So this was really describing the environmental benefits of engaging with renewable energy and electricity. So for example, powering homes without contributing to climate change or without polluting the atmosphere. The second way that they talked about renewable energy and engaging with renewables was in terms of using resources efficiently. And this had two components to it. So on the one hand, it was about waste. So they didn't really want to waste the energy that was being produced by the sun and the wind. And the other way they talked about engaging with renewables was in terms of having an effective use of limited resources by differentiating how we were using these resources. So for example, people talked about reserving chemicals for pharmaceuticals. So they felt that by generating renewable electricity themselves or by buying renewable electricity, it helped use resources efficiently. And the final sub-theme was talking about renewable electricity as a way to increase security. And people talked about security on a number of different levels. So there was a national element to security. So for example, in the quote here, you can see people talking about wanting to reduce their dependence on foreign nations. But there were also other aspects of security. So one of these was centered around future generations. So enabling future generations to live on the planet and continue to survive. And there was also security around communities. So when we did the interviews, there was a particularly bad period of weather in the UK where lots of people's electricity sources got taken out really. So they felt that if they were able to better produce renewables themselves, they would be able to be supported to be a bit more self-sufficient in terms of their own community. So we found that being sustainable and living a sustainable lifestyle was a really integral part and an integral reason to people engaging with renewables, both in terms of generating their own electricity, but also buying renewable electricity from their normal energy providers. So we felt that when we're thinking about how to design peer-to-peer energy trading platforms, the visible impact of their trading needs to be made clear to the users. So we could think about this in different ways. We can think about how the effect of energy trading on the environment can be made clear. So for example, we can talk about the amount of CO2 emissions that have actually been saved by this trading behavior when people are using new peer-to-peer platforms. We can talk about making resource consumption visible. So we might be able to surface to users the amount of oil and gas that has been saved through trading. And we also might be able to surface information about energy security. So we might be able to help generators actually see how much electricity they've generated themselves. So in this way, we can think that perhaps by thinking beyond some of the kind of purely economic benefits of the platform, we might be able to ensure that the information that we're surfacing actually fits in with users' motivations for using the platform and can actually help them want to continue to use it and for it to provide a real benefit for them. Okay, so the second theme that we generated was understanding engagement with renewables as a mechanism that helps individuals and groups take ownership of sustainability. So this is a really important aspect for our participants. So users actually participants actually kind of characterized decision-making, participation and welfare. They talked about these things as being really important for themselves, and they used it to actually argue against some of the normal structures that we have at the moment for kind of generating electricity and managing electricity. So at the moment we have large energy supply companies, and we have the UK government taking a key role in helping people generate energy and meeting their energy needs. But participants really had an ambivalent relationship with these two entities. So on the one hand, people actually appreciated the government for providing subsidies, and they felt that this really helped people want to invest in renewables, so for example in solar panels on their houses. And they also talked about alternative energy companies. So there's a whole bunch of kind of green energy companies in the UK. And they felt that these companies had a really good relationship in terms of increasing the supply of clean generation. But at the same time, people felt that there was negative things going on in terms of this top-down management. So, for example, government subsidies were continually reducing, so that there really is no incentive for people to install solar panels and have that capital outlay. And you know, another big issue that people had were these kind of big six energy companies. So there's a whole kind of bunch of companies in the UK. There's 6 of them. They have maybe seem to have a slight monopoly, and you know, they're not really green energy companies. So there is this discourse that they're just after profit and they just keep increasing prices. So they did feel that there is this negativity in how the system's managed at the moment. And importantly, people felt that if they're able and they're supported to kind of generate their own energy and also buy renewable energy, they can take back control. So they felt that there's lots of opportunities that could be supported if people could have this participatory role. So, for example, we have things in the UK like community-owned generation. And people feel that these are really great ways to get people involved. So, for example, it might encourage people to have a bit more buy-in in terms of their kind of engagement and their investment. So really, they wanted to see individuals and groups as kind of having a more central role in terms of managing the UK's energy, because even though there are kind of lots of little opportunities at the moment, they're not highly supported. So they wanted to see more of this. So when we think about perhaps trying to create design opportunities for this, hopefully it's clear that people understood peer-to-peer energy generation has been able to provide more opportunities for people to take this ownership. And they felt that if we could give people flexible business models, that would really help them. So, for example, you could imagine a platform that supports both cooperatives who can kind of produce for themselves, but you know, maybe at the same time it actually can help people who are more interested in kind of for-profit energy. So it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. We might be able to think about platforms that can support both kinds of needs and interests. And the final theme that we generated in this, the final sub-theme that we generated in this was about a whole load of challenges that people felt were happening in the current system. So on the one hand, they talked about needing to kind of win over people's hearts and minds in terms of getting, you know, the whole of the UK behind energy. They felt that there were kind of challenges that I just outlined in terms of the structures that are supposed to support renewable energy at the moment. And they also felt that there were lots of kind of technical limitations. So when you think about things like battery storage, they only typically store electricity for 24 hours and it's not very efficient. And you can think perhaps that solar panels only produce energy when the sun's shining. So people felt that there perhaps were lots of barriers at the moment to trying to have this kind of greener and more sustainable future. So one of the ways that people, one of the implications for this is perhaps to give people more kind of staged engagement opportunities. So in terms of trying to help people get buy-in in terms of hearts and minds, maybe people aren't willing to have this big outlay in terms of investing in some solar panels on their houses. So you might be able to think about people who can join as consumers only. And you also might be able to think about how platforms can help to educate people and provide information to help them get over some of the concerns that they have about the technical limitations. And we can think about ways that we can kind of design this into the system. So helping people have conversations, providing newsletters, providing reports that will continue to boost people's kind of knowledge and understanding of renewables. Okay, so I'll try and whiz through this section as I've only got a couple of minutes left. One way that people understood peer-to-peer electricity trading is as a mechanism to address a lot of these challenges. So they felt that it could really be a resource that helps users shape society. On the one hand, help them manage the UK's energy needs, so helping these local communities and individuals generate their own production and sell it to others. And also trying to create opportunities for new types of social relationships that will give people a boost. So for example, if you can give benefits to communities through peer-to-peer platforms, that might help people get buying at a level they might want to have that kind of more psychological investment in terms of hearts and minds. So here, we really felt that it isn't just about the personal economic benefit. It can support lots of different types of relationships and lots of different types of cultures that can actually feed into and support renewable engagement. And perhaps we can help people do this by helping them organise into communities where they are actually able to kind of verbalise some of the goals and the objectives that they have. So we felt that, you know, this sense of community was really important to people. So if we can help people build that sense of community and have some concrete goals that those communities are trying to generate within the platform, and that can really help shape society in that way. And the final theme was all about a whole bunch of kind of concerns that people might have about the platform and itself. So some of these are about kind of digital exclusion. So people felt that this is a digital platform, so what's going to happen to people who can't access that? Other things were about different types of power relations that the system might introduce. So it was clear that this wasn't it wasn't unloaded for participants. They saw positives and negatives of the platform. And if you read the paper, you're able to kind of see all of these kind of outlined. So I think in terms of a take-home message, we feel that peer-to-peer platforms can help sustainability by really supporting and nurturing groups, helping that sense of community spirit, helping that sense of group benefit. And it also can help people have autonomy, control and equality in terms of how energy is managed. And to help people do this, we have to let them organise around their kind of shared values that they have, and also to understand that these values might be different in terms of the different communities that are around. We have to help people have an understanding of the platforms and also an understanding of the way that the platforms influence the environment. So I'm going to end there. I'm going to open it up to any questions, but thank you very much for listening to my talk.
So much. So if you have like any question, please use the Zoom chat interface.
Well, I wanted to say congrats. It was a very nice presentation.
Thank you very much. So should I read out any questions myself, or?
Sorry, so the Matt, is it your question?
Sure. So yeah, my question was, did any opportunities come up for altruistic nonprofit generation? Like if I'm a generator and I'd like to donate to a local cause, like could that be worked into the system at all? Or did that come up in your interviews?
Yeah, so we did ask people about that, and you know, people had a whole mix of responses. So on the one hand, there was a willingness for people to donate to causes, you know, particularly when people understood those causes to be local. But at the same time, people also wanted to have governance structures that would perhaps help people and encourage people less on a charitable basis, and more in terms of, you know, if you think about fuel poverty, and people were a little bit wary about leaving it up to kind of donations and charity and altruism to support causes like fuel poverty. So on the one hand, people were open to making altruistic donations, but at the same time, they felt like there should actually be government intervention in terms of social welfare to help to make sure that they don't create communities of fuel poverty. So that was quite a complex piece of work. And I know that I think Ruzanna's done some additional work to look at some of these opportunities as well.
Oh, just to complement what Denise just said, in a separate piece, we asked a question about this to people who were participating in demand response. It was not necessarily peer-to-peer trading, but very, very close issue anyway. 2/3 of the people who we asked said they were willing to partially or fully contribute their gains to common goals. And the other third, they wanted it for themselves. So in this particular work, when we said setting goals, it's a way on a platform to define what you want to do with your income. And one of the goals could be to donate to community, to fuel poverty projects, and so on. but the goals can be defined by communities as well as individuals, and others can join or opt out of this.
Thank you. I think we have a lot of questions, but as a last question, maybe David, do you want to ask questions?
Sure. So one of the things that I've seen with energy, especially when people are starting to get batteries or other customer engagement systems, is getting people to lower the peak loads so that they don't have to kick it. The power companies don't have to build generating capacity that they use for just 30 hours a year or overtaxing the grid. Are there incentive structures that you're considering building in, or things that you can think of that would be useful for that type of work, cutting off those little peaks?
Yeah, there's actually a whole bunch of work about that. And to be honest, it wasn't something that I explicitly talked about in this interview with participants, but it was something that they were aware of. So in terms of flexible pricing based on kind of supply and demand. But again, I know that Ruzanna's done some work about this, so I'll let her answer that question as well.
Right, so when we talk about platform development, so implications for design of the platform, this is something which is integrated into the platform as an additional service. We didn't ask in this particular interview study about this, but it's a demand response issue. When do you actually, how do you stimulate consumption at some point and not the other? And prices is one of those things. And using things like storage technology to optimize and have some algorithmic automation behind this is the other part of it. So those things are there, but and pricing and persuasion and all those kind of things are part of this, but we did not include this into this particular study. So it's not about peer-to-peer trading necessarily, because trading is about generation and consumption, but it's part of this, which is a consumption side, which relates to demand response, a more specific issue.
Thank you, speaker, and the audience again. And we are